welcome to episode 274 of the Daily Fantasy Edge. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the analysts here at DraftKings. I'm the father of the most beautiful beast in the world, Jerry, and today, at long last, only 3 weeks late, it is the official DFS Edge salary release party. For this, I am joined by the gentleman you know and love. It is, of course, Peter Jennings, a.k.a. CSU Ram 88, a.k.a. the king of the golf course, and Al Zeidenfeld, a.k.a. Al Smizzle, a.k.a. the zombie killer. Peter, we'll start with you. The people haven't heard from you in a while, buddy. What's going on?
Just watching Tony Pollard get drafted in the 8th or 9th round and kicking myself. Other than that, you're right. I've golfed more consecutive days than I have in a long time. Missing, actually, the batting practice at Coors Field. The DraftKings guys are out here, so Empire Maker might need some redemption after his performance last time in the batting cages, and getting excited for the NFL.
How tilted are you that you gave out Tony Pollard when he was going in the 20th round, and now he's like a 10th round pick?
Yeah, I had him in all my 12-mans. I was getting him in the 18th round all the time, and now he's going in the 10th or 11th round. So, yeah, we love the listeners. All 6 of the listeners figured it out, and his ADP shocked up, shoot it up. Normally, I'd pull the Aaron Jones play like you. I got a really good sleeper for you guys, Patrick Mahomes.
I will say, though, that it's not just you. I mean, Zeke's holdout intensified greatly since you said that.
Things escalated quite quickly there in Dallas.
Right, exactly.
Anyway. And he had that big preseason game, which is exactly, that was the recipe for the big move up.
Right. Al, what's going on in Smiz's life, buddy?
Not much, man. Just really excited that football season's almost here. Glad to be producing content again. It's just exciting. My days are filled. Instead of just twiddling my thumbs and trying to click on heads on a pixelated screen, I'm out here researching football and talking about football on a pretty much daily basis. So that's the dream, right? Not for you, Adam. I know for you, you don't like talking about football. You like talking about toilet seats. But for me, I enjoy talking with people about sports.
Yeah, I would prefer to talk about life, but, football is a close second. Okay, I think the first topic today, before we get into the salary release, because Emanuel Sanders is not on the main slate, but we have to talk about Emanuel Sanders. Peter, do you feel like less of a man because you are still limited by your Achilles tear from 4 years ago, while Emanuel Sanders, who is 32 years old, 8 months removed from his Achilles tear, and is back in the NFL playing at an extremely high level?
My confidence was already low, and then Emanuel Sanders, he's shattered it. Not only my wife prefers Emanuel Sanders to me, he recovered from the injury that I'm still just mentally and physically not the same from. So it's just defying everything. I have 0 shares of Emanuel Sanders. I'm going down with a ship, and he somehow looks incredible. He's doing shirtless videos online. My wife's sending them to me, like, she was at the game when he made the catch. It's pretty much worst case scenario for me, and divorce is imminent because of Emmanuel Sanders.
What did he do differently than anybody else recovering from, or is he just like Wolverine? Like him and Adrian Peterson are just Wolverine and they're able to recover a lot quicker? Or did he like go to Germany and have like horse plasma injected into his heel that helped him get better faster? Like what was the process for him, or is he just not human?
Yeah. I don't think we know. I mean, I don't think we have any reports on exactly what he did, but what we do know is that if you watch that game, the second preseason game the Broncos played, I mean, he looked like his old self. And that doesn't mean that he's going to be like that in the regular season. It doesn't mean he'll sustain his health. But man, I mean, his ADP is like 125, or it was, and it may have been even higher. But now I assume, I don't know, I haven't been doing any drafts, but now I assume he's going much higher than that based on the preseason
around
game.
The 10th, 11th round based on the last couple days.
Yeah, I mean, given what's around them with Cortland Sutton, who I think is shaky, and Deshaun Hamilton, who I like, but is definitely not a big-time difference maker, I think Emmanuel Sanders in the 10th, 11th round makes a lot of sense. Are you going to now start drafting him, Peter, or are you just completely going down with the ship?
I should. I mean, normally I like to hedge, but I still haven't been drafting him. I think the Broncos are going to struggle on offense, and their defense is going to be really, really good. So we'll see what happens. I'm still buying Royce Freeman, really, and that's kind of it. We'll see. But it's incredible what he's done. And I will say, I think in general, these surgeries for Achilles have gotten a little bit better over the last couple of years. I mean, they're always getting better, but it does seem Even just from talking with some of my peer buddies or whatever that had the surgery, they're moving along a little quicker. So we'll see. Hopefully Kevin Durant, some of these other guys have had the injury, will recover really well, just like Sanders.
I was going to say, how quickly were the Brooklyn Nets on the phone to like Emanuel Sanders? Hey, Manny, how's it going? So what'd you do to come back so quickly from this Achilles injury? We're just, we're asking for a friend.
Yeah. Obviously, Al's referring to Mr. Kevin Durant, who is also coming off an Achilles tear. Okay, we've dilly-dallied enough. Let's get into the salary release party. I think at quarterback, probably and we're not going to get into, exactly, situations and matchups and all that, but I think overarching we'll go by position here and just talk through it a little bit. I think the big story at quarterback is Kyler Murray, because I projected him just on first glance within 5 minutes of looking at the salaries, Kyler Murray to be the most owned quarterback at I think he's 5,600 home against the Lions. I don't think it's the best possible matchup for the Cardinals. Al, I'm curious what you think about Kyler Murray, and I'm curious if you watched the second preseason game, because if you did, you saw a very ugly performance from Kyler Murray. I'm not sure that matters, but it was not pretty.
I don't really pay that much attention to everything that happens in preseason. I think there are certain things that are extremely valuable and Adam, we've talked about it before, and you tweet out the snaps with the first team. I think that knowing that a player is going to be on the field is very important, but Cam Newton looked like hot garbage in the preseason before his rookie year and had a fantastic rookie campaign. There's been other quarterbacks like Blake Bortles who look like world beaters in preseason, and he's Blake Bortles. So I'm not putting too much stock in how a quarterback looks running the most basic of offenses against somewhat basic defenses. I'd rather them try things out and see what they can get away with, and maybe they're going to look bad in the preseason, and then when the season comes, it's a different story. So I'm not putting too much stock in that. If you think that Kyler Murray is going to run for 45 yards, throw for 200, and be accountable for 2 touchdowns at 5.6, he's going to pay that off and have the ceiling for more. But against this opponent, Detroit likes to play slow. They are favored. If they get up, they're going to run 60-40. And just take the ball out of Murray's hands, and that defense should not really be able to stop him.
Yeah, I mean, and the mismatch between Detroit's defensive line, which I think will be one of the best in the league, and Arizona's offensive line, which I think will be one of the worst, I think it's something to note. But Peter, I assume you like Kyler Murray. Have you seen anything to dissuade you from spending down at Kyler Murray 5.6K?
Well, I still like Kyler Murray, and I think he'll have a good season, and I'm not too worried about the preseason stuff. I don't think the Cardinals are going to be showing, a lot of what they plan to unleash in the regular season. But I will say I have an expectation that most likely I'm going to be drafting an expensive quarterback, just because there's a good chance we have some really nice value plays. And if you look in the years past, a lot of the times, you get a couple guys who are basically been priced that are really good plays, and then all of a sudden you're, just price doesn't even matter. It's just kind of a pick 'em. So I could see spending up on quarterback. You mentioned Cam, Al. I'm getting higher and higher on Cam in both season-long drafts and also in daily fantasy. This Carolina team could be good, and I've been very encouraged with what I've seen with his throwing motion, and that's one of the highest total games on the board. So I do think Kyler's a good play, but I could see a situation in which you can really spend whatever you want on quarterback.
I mean, yeah, you could go up for Patrick Mahomes. You can come down for 100 more than Kyler Murray is Wentz, who's got a tremendously high team total. So I'm not really stressing about, do I need to find a $5,000 QB for week 1? Because as you said, there's value all across the board.
Yeah, one thing about Cam is I'm not sure this Carolina pass game can support Samuel and DJ Moore and Olsen and Christian McCaffrey, et cetera, where they're going in drafts. But I do think that if you take Cam, Cam can soak up all of those guys' stats, and I think they're all really good players. And I couldn't believe that Cam was going QB 10 or whatever. So yeah, I certainly like Cam. He's 6,500. Jameis Winston is 6,600. Baker is 64. And before we move on, I just want to ask about Lamar Jackson, Al, playing the Dolphins. Lamar Jackson looks a little bit improved as a thrower. I don't know. Still don't think that's going to be obviously his main thing. What do you think about Lamar Jackson at 6K flat in Miami week 1?
Can I ask you a question in return? We're going to use the Socratic method here.
Sure.
How do you feel about Tim Tebow from 2011?
Yeah.
Do you think that Tim Tebow has a better arm than Lamar Jackson?
No, I think Lamar Jackson's better.
Exactly.
Speaking of
I think
2011,
he's better in all aspects, really.
yeah.
Similar as a runner. The stats for a runner are going to be about the same. 10, 11 carries a game. Tebow was much bigger and stronger around the goal line than obviously than Lamar Jackson is. But like if Lamar Jackson is just a slightly better thrower than Tim Tebow, and I believe that he has more arm talent than Tim Tebow had, but is the same runner. Tim Tebow is a tremendous quarterback in that 2011 season once he took over the job for the Broncos, as I'm sure Pete is going to give us 2,000 words on right after I'm done with this segment. So like as Lamar Jackson goes, so goes this Ravens offense. They have a full offseason to prepare for putting in a system for him that he can thrive in. They added speed on the outside. They're going to run it 40 times a game in total, including his rush totals. And the speed on the outside between Boykin and Brown, the pass catching ability of Andrews, the tight end, is going to pull safeties off the line a little bit more, giving them more room at the line of scrimmage. I think he has a tremendous ability to be a very good quarterback at 6K. And I think that he's going to price up. This might be the cheapest we see him this season.
Mm-hmm.
In a great matchup too. I mean, Fitzmagic, we've seen him put up points. We've also seen him turn it over a bunch. Miami, played pretty fast last year. I expect them to play fast this year. I think Lamar Jackson has a great chance to get the 100-yard rushing bonus. I mean, Lamar Jackson to me is probably the lowest that you'd go down where you say, yeah, I could actually see him being the number one overall fantasy quarterback this year, which is crazy considering where he's going. But it's possible to me that if he plays all 16 games, stays really healthy, his rushing stats are just going to be so immense that he has a chance.
I loved Tebowing. I don't know if you guys remember this, but Tebowing was like after Tebow scored, every time he would like get down on one knee and put like his fist against his forehead and his elbow against his knee. So I was actually with my wife in Rome, and I was going to all these like super religious places and like Tebowing in front of them. I have so many great pictures of me Tebowing in front of famous churches and stuff. It was amazing.
Great pictures.
Yeah, okay. I want to mention some stacks that I think are going to be popular. I wrote an article about this on DK Playbook, and this was a couple weeks ago. It may have changed now, but these were the stacks that I projected to be the most popular in week one. Kyler, Christian Kirk, and David Johnson, Jameis Winston, Godwin, Evans, OJ Howard, Kirk Cousins, Dalvin, Thielen, Diggs, Cam, CMC, Curtis Samuel, and Baker and Odell. Peter, I'm curious if there's any stacks there that I mentioned that you think are going to be over-owned, or any others that you think should be on there that will be super owned.
Yeah, I think that those are all, strong candidates. I think the Arizona one maybe temper. I think the preseason game I've seen his ADP fall. I could see it not being as heavily owned as we initially thought. I'm pretty high just in general on this Carolina game. I think that there's a lot of good options here, and I'm curious to see how the Rams play. So I love the Cam stacks. Maybe something that's a little contrarian would be the Goff stacks in that game. Mm-hmm. But I do think that trend, I mean, all the ADPs of the Carolina guys are going up, and with that total sitting at 51, I anticipate that game to be pretty heavily owned. But I also see a lot of equity. So, yeah, just hitting on what you mentioned, I think those are all really good. The Colts-Chargers game is another one. Like, Andrew Luck's injury right now is obviously lowering a lot of the Colts ADPs, but curious your thoughts on that game, Al, and the stacks that Adam has as well, because I do think especially if Melvin Gordon's out, we could see a lot of people on Jackson and Eckler, and that could be an interesting game to stack as well.
Here's 10 stacks that I like the most, and what else do you guys think is available on the slate? I think Adam nailed every one of the stacks, first of all. So every stack that he named, the Mayfield stacks, the Newton stacks, Winston stacks, Mahomes, whatever, all those are fine. Garoppolo to Kittle wasn't mentioned, and we know how bad Tampa Bay was and continues to be defensively in a game that has the highest total on the board. Kittle's targets may come down slightly from last year with more able-bodied receivers around him, and Garoppolo, who will spread the ball a little bit more than Mullins or Beathard or whoever else they were just trotting out there last season. But like, as much as I think Detroit is going to run the hell out of the ball all year, Arizona's got guys walking off the street to play corner right now. And they have a team total of 24.5. On the road, they're going to have to throw. You know that Arizona can score. I don't think every one of Detroit's touchdowns are going to come on the ground. And if Stafford has 302 TDs, at the price that he's at and the price that his pass catchers are at, Jones or Galladay, looks like an off the board kind of stack that I have not heard too many people speaking about yet.
Yep. I like that. We actually got a listener question about that. We'll talk about that in a bit. Peter, I want to ask a general game theory question. It seems like game stacks like started to get a little popular a couple years ago and then got more popular last year. Now it seems like everybody wants to do the quarterback, wide receiver, and then wide receiver from the other team, bringing it back. Are you concerned that in something like the Wildcat, the 3-3 Wildcat on DraftKings, every lineup is going to be some type of mini game stack like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the markets are getting more efficient. People have realized that that's a correlation move. You know, when DFS was first round, Al, I remember seeing you in the baseball streets. People didn't even know to stack in baseball. Now, if you look at tournaments, I mean, it's a wild percentage. It's basically everyone's stacking. And I think football ultimately is going to kind of shift towards that just because it's a proven correlation. And that's, you know, look at the millionaire makers. Look at a lot of these tournaments. These game stacks are winning those tournaments so often that, yeah, people have caught on.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to running back. There are so many running backs, Al. I don't even know how we separate these guys. Like, not even counting some of the really interesting guys in committees like, you know, Miles Sanders and Matt Breida, and not even counting other guys like, you know, Devontae Freeman and Damian Williams, who are definitely still in play. I still have like 13 guys on my list who I think could be in play. There's so many. I don't even want to go through them all. How can we separate? And like, if you're MMEing or if you're playing tournaments, how can you even narrow your pool down? Because you can't really play 13 running backs, even if you're playing 150 lineups.
By height. Like, just sort by the guys that are 5'10 to 6'2. Exclude anybody shorter or taller. That'll narrow your grouping down, and you'll have a really good chunk of players that you can use still throughout your lineups. There's too many running backs to name, and we still have some things that aren't settled. Melvin Gordon expected to miss week 1, so that means Eckler at 5,500's in play. But everybody from 5K to 7,000 is in play. Mm-hmm. There's like 12 running backs in there that all have favorable matchups that do look like they're going to get 20 or so touches against teams or in games that look like they're going to score. Kerryon Johnson at 58, Dalvin Cook at 6,000 against the tastiest matchup. To me, looks like the best play on the board. Leonard Fournette against Kansas City at home, 6,100. Eckler at 5,500 against Indy. Marlon Mack at 5,600. I'm really, really high on Marlon Mack this year, albeit his success to me is tied to Andrew Luck's health, which right now is still up in the air. Chris Carson against the Cincinnati Bengals at home, massive favorite. We've talked about over the years, right? This isn't like news to anybody. Guys, play home favored running backs. This isn't a big shocker. And you couple Carson with Penny's struggles in the preseason, and he might just get 20 touches a game, at least early in the season. Kalen Ballage at 4,500. Pollard, if Zeke sits out at 4,500. I don't know. It's a running back bonanza in week 1.
Yeah. You didn't answer the question. How do we narrow them down?
Damn it. Can you just let me pivot? How come nobody answers in presidential debates like you? How come the moderators don't act like you?
Oh, this is actually a good idea. If you guys are listening, I'd love to moderate a presidential debate. That would be great.
That would be awesome. Maybe you could throw it on your LinkedIn if you get that job.
What do the presidents think? What do the candidates think about team sex? Anyways, Peter, I don't know, man. Normally, it's very clear to me which running backs are in play for cash. There aren't that many because I'm looking for 3 down plus goal line backs in reasonable matchups. I don't think I can remember a week when there are this many who would even be in play for cash. Can you remember a situation like this before? Maybe it's just
10
other week ones.
I mean, I feel like other week ones, we've had a couple like, oh, this guy's now got the job. He's min-priced. You're definitely playing him. And then you were playing Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, or who, like, we basically because of the pricing and just injuries or suspensions, there's always like you're playing these min-priced guys and you're just playing the best available. So I agree. There's so many good guys. I love that like 5 to 6K range. I mean, Kerryon Johnson, 5,800, another guy to throw into all the guys Al named, Dalvin Cook, who we've all talked about. Like, there's just so many great plays. So we'll see. I mean, right now it looks like ownership might be lower on someone like Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey, just because there are so many really, really good values, and those guys are, you know, on the expensive side. So I do think for tournaments, there'll be good opportunities to get guys low owned and potentially a lot of opportunity to pivot, which Al, you've mentioned multiple times in this podcast, being contrarian early is super valuable.
I think that those high price guys are going to have percentage owned a lot like the top golfers in a DFS golf tournament, right? Where the ownership at the mid range and the low priced guys is going to vary, and you're going to have some high guys and some low guys. But basically, all the best golfers, if you have all of them out there for an Open, they're all like 25 to 30% owned, typically speaking. There's usually one that's not, right? But like you've got 3 or 4 of them that are just there. I think that Barkley and CMC are going to have ownership because you can easily take 2 of the guys in the range that we spoke about, Pete, and then just say, okay, well, Barkley's my third because I know he's going to get 25 touches and 5 catches. Right. Same with CMC. So I think people are mostly going to pick 2 of those mid-range guys, or a mid-range and a lower price guy, like if Pollard is the starter unquestioned for week 1, and then say, well, how can I not roster Barkley or CMC?
Right. Let me tell you why this slate is weird in that context. Normally it'd be like, great, fine, we'll pay down at running back and we'll go ham at wide receiver. Let me tell you the wide receivers who are not on this slate. On the main slate, Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, Juju Smith-Schuster, Julian Edelman, Antonio Brown are all not on the main slate. It leaves only really Odell Beckham, 8,100, Julio, 8K at Minnesota, Mike Evans, 7,900, and Ty Scum at 7,600 against the Jaguars has been the only high priced option. So do you know what I mean? That like, you know what I'm saying, Al, right? That like,
you're
since
forced
there are,
spend. Yeah. You have to spend
like,
the money somewhere.
Yeah. Even if you wanted to go ham at wide receiver and go cheaper at running back where it looks really good, it's like, it's not even that exciting to do that because there aren't that many options at wide receiver.
Okay. So stack Mahomes and Kelsey and then play the mid-range at wide receiver. Got it. Yeah. Thank you. We finally got it, boys. We got Levitan's cash game lineup.
Yeah. Right now, it looks like with the running back value, you're going to end up with a lot of those high-end receivers are going to be heavily owned, and the high-end tight ends are for sure going to be heavily owned, especially with Kittle and Howard in that matchup that I think a lot of people are going to be stacking. So I do agree, Adam. It'll be interesting. And a lot of it's just going to come down to what happens in the Dallas backfield, what happens with San Diego, if there's another injury, like, you know, if one of the Chiefs running backs got hurt, it would be interesting, especially with Darwin Thompson moving up. So we'll see what happens, but it's going to be dynamic to the, you know, how many cheap guys are like quote unquote must plays with so many good options.
Yeah. I have a question for you about wide receiver, Al. Why did DraftKings price Tampa Bay's number 1 wide receiver at 6,200 and their number 2 wide receiver, Mike Evans, at 7,900?
What are you, Twitter? Hey, Al, why did DraftKings do this? I'm Lieutenant Weinberg. I have no responsibility here whatsoever.
I was just joking, obviously. I was just trying to get a shot in on my boy Godwin is 6,200 and Mike Evans is 7,900. Shout out to the God. Okay.
Well, no, but that's a legitimate question, though, that we should at least flesh out a little bit. Is it 1 and 1A? Or is what Mike Evans said last week somewhat true, that Godwin looks like he's going to be the wide receiver 1 on this team?
Wouldn't surprise me. I think 1,700 is too far for them to be apart. I think
agree.
Mike Evans' ADOT will be much further down the field, and you can make a case that maybe he has better touchdown expectation. But yeah, I could see Godwin catching a lot more balls than Mike Evans this year, like, you know, like 90 something to like 80 or 90 something to like, or, you know, I don't know. But I think that Godwin's range of outcomes is certainly to be much better than Mike Evans, at least like 40% of the time. I don't know. What do you think?
Rank the Buccaneers top 3 on the team in terms of red zone targets this season.
Probably
Evans or Howard 1.
Yeah, I was going to say OJ Howard 1, then Evans, then Godwin.
Okay.
I don't know.
Pete?
Yeah, OJ Howard has been one of my biggest buys all year. I love him, and Godwin's great, but his ADP, thanks to freaking Levitan, has gone through the roof. So I think Godwin will be chalk relatively. That's a great price for him in that game. But again, it's just going to come down to what roster construction looks like, depending on who plays and whatnot.
Last year, before like everybody was all excited about Godwin, he was part of the infamous dual condom game where if you played Adam Humphries like Al did, it was the double condom game, and if you played Chris Godwin, it was the raw game. Do you remember that, Al?
They had the same amount of points, didn't they? Was that the one where they both had like 18 fantasy points? There was a 1 week where you called that out and they both had like 18 points.
I don't remember, but I
don't remember. Now you remembered everything else about that story.
I only remember the condom jokes. I don't remember the actual results. All right, now it is time.
Well, wait. Now you brought up Humphreys. What about Humphreys? Is he too cheap in that offense with the amount of work that he's getting in the preseason?
I haven't even looked at him, but there's just so many guys I want to play. I can't go that far.
Agree. He got like 7 targets on one drive in the first game. It was dumb.
Okay, now it is time to tell you guys about LinkedIn. Hiring isn't as simple as putting an ad in the paper or posting to a job board. When you're juggling hiring with everything it takes to grow your business, it's important that you reach the right candidates at the right time. That's where LinkedIn comes in. Over 600 million members visit LinkedIn to make connections, learn and grow as professionals, and discover new job opportunities. That's how they make sure your job post gets in front of people with the right hard skills and soft skills to meet your role requirements. Things like collaboration, work ethic, adaptability. LinkedIn does the legwork to match you to the most qualified candidates so you can focus on hiring the person who will transform your business. A hire is made every 8 seconds on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can pay what you want and the first $50 is on them. Just visit linkedin.com/edge. Again, that's linkedin.com/edge to get $50 off your first job post. Terms and conditions apply. Of course, after I win the Million Maker in week 1, I'll never need LinkedIn again. So here we go. Let's continue talking about. Let's continue talking about the wide receivers a little bit. The tight ends a little bit. We mentioned OJ Howard. We mentioned Travis Kelce. I think again, Peter, you can make a case that as always, DraftKings has slightly depressed the tight end salaries relative to wide receiver production. In other words, if Travis Kelce and George Kittle and Zach Ertz had their stats at the wide receiver position, they would be 7,500, 7,700, et cetera. Instead, Kelce's 71, Kittle's 66, Ertz is 61. It seems like the DraftKings algorithm is the same as it has been for tight ends, and I know that's been something that's going on for a while that you've been on.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's looking like everyone's going to be underpriced. So, like, you look at tight end, you're like, wow, there's some screaming values like Hunter Henry, 3,900 versus the Colts. Jordan Reed, who's looking awesome right now and might, if you have a healthy Jordan Reed for the ones against Philadelphia, 3,600, that sounds great. But you have all these elite tight ends. So I do agree if they were receivers would be much more expensive, especially Kelce and Kittle and Ertz. So yeah, it's tough. Making lineups, you just have these all-star teams, it feels like. So we'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, tight end seems depressed, and you shouldn't be playing one in the flex. I think I overdid that actually looking through the data. A lot of the millionaire makers actually don't have a tight end in the flex, even though they do seem like great value. Although week 1, it wouldn't shock me to see like a Kelce Kittle team or something like that, or specifically Kittle and Howard in that game stack being on like a millionaire maker winning team.
Yeah, I'm always, whenever I build lineups, I'm always so tempted, and maybe it's a leak, I don't know. I'm always so tempted to pay down at tight end. Hunter Henry, Jordan Reed, Evan Ingram at 4,800 stands out. OJ Howard at 5K, and then you have the big 3. I don't know, Al. What should we be doing at tight end? Again, there's a ton of guys that I think you can make a case for.
I mean, if you're paying down at tight end, Hunter Henry is the nuts. Right? Especially without Melvin Gordon, who soaked up so much red zone usage, both through carries and through the air the past couple of seasons, the highest usage red zone back in the league the last 2 years. Hunter Henry at 3,900 is just too cheap. Looks like he's fine. Coming up a little bit, Evan Ingram should get otherworldly volume for a tight end. Most tight ends were looking at like 4 or 5 targets a game. He should get 8 to 10 targets a game, I'd assume, at least early in the season, especially with guys like Tate and possibly Shepard being out. OJ Howard at 5K in a shootout. Kittle at 6,600 against the Bucks, also in that same shootout. Kelce at 7,100 every week. Don't care about matchup. My question is Jordan Reed. You both mentioned him. I kind of don't play tight ends against Philly. And Jordan Reed's injury history aside, he does look great in camp. Washington's not going to play very fast, though they should be playing from behind in this game. So you would assume that he'd get a good amount of targets. Why should I play Jordan Reed with the injury risk and the horrible matchup instead of somebody like Greg Olsen at 3,200? If I'm paying down.
No, I think that's fine. I think the argument would be that Jordan Reed is not an injury risk in DFS because it's week 1 and
it is. He's one hit away from being concussed. If a butterfly lands on his helmet, he could get another concussion.
Stop. Come on.
He's had a lot of them.
He's he's no more likely to be hurt than Greg Olsen in week 1.
Okay, I agree with you on that. No, I agree with you on that. I'm saying the type of injury that if he gets his bell rung at all, they're going to take it. They're going to shut him down for that day because of his concussion history versus another tight end without that concussion history in the same price range with a better matchup.
Yeah, I think a better argument.
I didn't need to use Greg Olsen. I'm just saying another tight end in that range.
Yeah,
Delaney Walker, let's say.
I think a better argument against Jordan Reed is that the quarterback situation and the team is just total dust. Like they're just lacking talent so bad and they're going to Philly. It's just not a great situation for Jordan Reed. I agree with you. So that would be the argument for me against Jordan Reed. Yeah.
Philly is the Bermuda Triangle for opposing tight ends.
Yeah.
I want to get one thing out there just real quick now. I think the tight end is a big 4 position. I have Howard and Ertz just for the season, like basically at the same place. So I think all 4 of those guys should be the chalk. And then I think I agree with Al Henry. Those are my top 5 tight ends. I think after that, you're trying to be more contrarian and,
might be getting too cute, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for cash, for me, if I would go, Henry would be the cheap guy, the last cheap guy I'd consider, or else I'm playing one of the big 4.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Let's get to some listener questions here that people were excited that the salary release party was happening. Question 1 from JJ Football. He says, what other narrative streets are we going down in week 1? He had some good ones here. He had the Wentz Ertz Bible narrative, which obviously I've talked about. For those guys that don't know what that is, Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz go to Bible study together. And that is one of the alleged reasons that Wentz has such eyes for Zach Ertz. He also mentions the potential Dwayne Haskins, Terry McLaurin shower narrative. Obviously, they played together at Ohio State, likely showered together. He also has the Deshaun Jackson revenge narrative. Deshaun Jackson spent some time with the Redskins, now is back with the Eagles and facing the Redskins. Those were good ones, man. Al, did you have any others that he didn't mention for week 1?
No, but I like there is a little correlation between 2 of his 3 narratives there.
Mm-hmm.
You have the Wentz Ertz Bible narrative, and in the Bible, we learned that an eye for an eye. So you also have the revenge narrative with Djax. I'm going to pair the Wentz Bible narrative with the Djax eye for an eye revenge narrative for all the money.
I have a narrative that I've heard a lot that I don't know how much weight it bears, but it's about Kyler Murray. Cliff Kingsbury's been recruiting Kyler Murray since he was 14 years old. Cliff Kingsbury's ideal quarterback is Kyler Murray. Obviously Kyler Murray is really good and it is what it is. I don't think that the fact Cliff Kingsbury's been recruiting Kyler Murray for 8 years has any bearing on it. I don't know, Peter. Any other narratives this guy didn't name?
Yeah, the Amari Cooper CSU narrative is strong. Michael Gallup also, part of that same narrative. So I'm buying the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm just making an excuse to include Amari Cooper and Gallup on Narrative Street.
All right, question 2. I think it's for me. It's from Ryan Horodisky. He says, need an update on the book. Yes, if you go to my Twitter at adamlevitan, I want to explain that the book, it should be in quotation marks. This is mainly a transcription that, shout out to producer Luke, who did a transcription of a lot of the absurd stuff that I've said on the solo podcast and a lot of the strategy stuff I've talked about on the solo podcast. Producer Luke transcribed it, sent it to me. I spent the last 7 months cleaning it up and figuring out where I wanted to say, writing some intros, rewriting some things, getting everything in order. So I don't want people to think this is like an actual book, but I do think that people will enjoy it if you enjoy the solo pod. So yes, anyways, the bottom line is
like
that,
your version of Letters for a Nut or Letters from a Nut by Jerry Seinfeld?
I was thinking Howard Stern Comes Again, but I don't know what that is. Yeah.
All right.
Anyways, go to the Twitter. You can find some information there on Thursday afternoon. I tweeted about it. You can see the cover. Shout out to Alex Blundell, Aloe Up on Twitter, who's done some absurd Jerry memes before and did the cover, which by far the cover will be by far the best part of the book. I guarantee that. So anyways.
Little Easter egg on the cover too. I like that.
Anyways, there's your book update. Okay, question 3, Blue Devil Boss. He says, what are the chances at the end of the season? Oh my God, we already talked about this. I'm sorry. Yeah. Blue Devil Boss asks, what are the chances at the end of the season Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are within 5 points of each other in wide receiver scoring? We already talked about this. I apologize, Blue Devil Boss. We talked about it without even giving you credit. Let's move on. Andrew Charlton says, is it a stars and scrubs approach at running back week 1? The contrarian approach given the value in the mid-range, or just a donk play? I guess what he's saying here, Al, is that everybody's just going to go mid-range at running back. Is there any merit to going stars and scrubs at running back?
Yeah, if you can find a scrub that you like if you think that Justice Hill is going to get 15 touches and bust a long touchdown, then sure. But realistically speaking, I don't think you need to. And you're going to be contrarian in that mid-range anyway. There's 12 guys to be played from 4,500 all the way up to like 7,000. So I don't think any one of them is going to carry 45 or 60% ownership for any real reason. You can be contrarian and still be in a great spot, right? Yeah. Like if everybody's going to be on Dalvin Cook and Kerryon Johnson, tell me that Chris Carson's not in a very good spot there as well, or Nick Chubb. Yeah. Right. Like you can have a home favored running back in a really good spot that should get 20 plus touches with inclusion in the pass game and the goal line work. I don't think you need to look that far to be contrarian this week.
Yeah. I think some people are going to be on the Miles Sanders train at 3,900 home against the Redskins. If you wanted to go stars and scrubs, I don't know, Peter, what do you think about stars and scrubs at running back?
Yeah, I mean, I think Justin Jackson could be another guy with Gordon. I think he's going to end up holding out. And the same thing, I mean, if Zeke is not playing week 1, I'm going to have some shares of Pollard. This kid, I am just so bullish on him. So I do like some of the stars and scrubs selections. But the nice thing, like Al just talked about too, is no matter what you do, given all the value, I think the ownership is going to be spread out quite a bit no matter what. So it's not like some previous years where guys are 60, 70% owned. So a lot more of it is just figuring out who you think the top scorers are going to be.
Yep. All right. Last question we are going to do today comes from A. Gary 44. He says, how would you go about a 3-entry max tournament? What kind of lineups are you putting in? Chalk versus contrarian. Peter, I know you're obviously playing the 3 maxes. Are you making special lineups just for the 3 max? And what are those lineups? What do you look for in those lineups?
Yeah, so I think my process this year is going to be most weeks just making like 6 to 10 handmade teams. And I'll throw those all in the 3 max, and I'll make sure to put those in like the higher stakes tournaments. And I'm really going to focus on trying to find some contrarian games or having a stance on some contrarian players. So I do think the 3 max, I think one thing you can exploit is that people are still putting in their cash game teams quite a bit. And if results are similar to last year where there's, a lot of chalk, you'll have an edge just by, avoiding putting your cash game in those tournaments, I think. So that's going to be my process. I will say one move I do like, which is balls to the wall for the millionaire maker. I plan on putting those, 6 to 10 teams in. And then if there's a week where I feel really, really good about one quarterback or like a game specifically, I'm just going to build 150 teams around that game. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah. Hashtag how rich, but I love it.
I just think you got to get. I think in the past that's taken away from the process. I think I build better teams by hand, and if I'm going to do the 150, I just have to simplify the process.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're like really good at MMEing and it's really all you're focused on. You're not playing cash. You're not playing a bunch of other stuff. I feel like MME is extremely distracting to me as well. You're just like trying to get your exposures right the whole time. Anyways, Al, 3-entry max strategy is what A. Gary 44 is looking for.
I build my cash game lineup, then off of that I build what we've talked about before, a leagues lineup, and then I build something that I believe is going to be contrarian to both of those, whether it's a game stack or whether it's a double QB or a QB double stack with 2 wide receivers or a wide receiver tight end, or a pass catching running back and one of the pass catchers for my GPP lineup. And it's a simple way to look at a full-on GPP lineup. Cross off the top 3 guys that you think are going to be the highest owned, the guys at the top of whatever projection system you use that show up as the highest value. Cross those off at wide receiver, cross those off at running back and at tight end, and then build a lineup with the 4 through X guys, right? For the rest of your lineup. You'll have a lineup that comes in at a much lower total percentage owned while still not being overly contrarian in terms of matchups, volume, and everything else that we look for out of those players.
Yep. All right. That is going to do it for the official salary release party. I've had some questions about whether this podcast will continue through the season due to the new Establish the Run venture. Yes, I want to be very clear. This podcast will continue. Solo Pod Tuesday. 3-man will be released on Thursdays. So we will see you for that. For Al, for Peter, for Jerry, For producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody. We are promoters at DraftKings and also avid fans. Our usernames are Adam Levitan, Al Smizzle, and CSU Ram 88. We may sometimes play on our personal accounts in the games that we offer advice on. Although we have expressed our personal view on the games and strategies in this podcast, they do not necessarily reflect the views of DraftKings, and we also may deploy different players and strategies than what we recommended in this podcast.